Hi, welcome to Reset Revolution, which is a platform that aims to raise awareness about different social justice issues. I'm Justina, and today I'm joined with Emanuela, and we're going to be talking about racism in American schools and also how it compares to international schools. So, hi, Emanuela, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, of course. I'm Manuela. I am 15. I'm a sophomore in high school, and I just recently moved to India.
Great. And could you give a bit of background on what kind of schools you've gone to throughout your life?
Yeah, of course. So, like I was saying, I've lived in Canada, Peru, Ethiopia, and Germany. And whenever I live overseas, I always go to a private or international school. When I'm back in the U.S., I have always gone to a public school.
Okay, great. So I guess we will just jump right in. And if you could talk a bit about your different experiences with racism in and outside of the classroom.
Yeah, of course. There have been a few incidents like that I have personally been targeted or I've observed, and I don't want to get into too much detail. But one specific instance I can talk about is when we were in gym class in eighth grade, and this non-white yet non-black male made a very derogatory comment about another black student, a black boy, saying the N word alongside with a bunch of other stuff. And this was someone who I did consider like friendly, like we were kind of friends. Um, and I noticed that everyone found it like no one was shocked. I seemed to be the only one I was shocked. And keep in mind, I was the only African American student in the classroom at the time. And everyone kind of normalized it. Everyone was like, "Oh yeah," and the response from like everyone else was, "Oh well, he didn't mean it. He doesn't know what it means," or "He doesn't. He's just kidding." And it's completely unacceptable to make excuses for that kind of behavior.
hmm So, what kind of response did you see from the teachers and people in higher positions?
Yeah. So the thing is, this school, however, it was very diverse in some terms. I mean, there were a lot of Southeast Asian students at the school, um, about 47%, um, and but all the staff was Caucasian,
hmm
no color,
hmm
no representatives, And like I felt like the approach towards this was very much kind of like a forgive and forget type of situation. And I feel like that most stems from the fact that they were not black, so they obviously could not even understand like the weight of the words and like how hurtful it is in general. And I feel like they were very dismissive of it, and they used the excuse of kids will be kids or boys will be boys, which um, insinuates that this type of behavior is normal from
hmm
kids, and it's normal for them to say this kind of thing to us. Definitely.
Yeah. So just kind of casually brush it off like it's normal, it happens. Yeah. Terrible. And so, overall, throughout American schools, what kind of racial issues do you think exist as a pattern?
Yeah, of course. So there are a lot of things, and I feel like with American schools, it's more like systematic inequality. So there's a lot to unpack, and some of the examples would be the difference in punishment for Black students versus non-Black students, racial stereotyping, and modern day segregation.
hmm
So the first thing I want to talk about would be, or do I need to get into everything?
Anything that you're comfortable with, like it's up to you.
Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is the modern day segregation. So I would say that I feel like this term is very frowned upon, and it's not something that many people will notice until you look at statistics and you realize, oh yeah, this is bad. This is really bad. So on average in the U.S., predominantly white schools in white neighborhoods receive more funding, and students are better equipped and supported compared to predominantly black schools in urban neighborhoods. And this creates a cycle of students in the well provided area receiving much more support in their education. They're accomplishing more stuff. They're like reaching the levels that they should be. They're getting better prepared for the next step, after graduation, like going to college and everything. And like compared to the students in the urban neighborhoods, like things are completely different.
Mm-hmm.
They're not like most classrooms aren't equipped with the basic necessities. Most students aren't like passing their class like expectations, and it's really concerning because we see that I feel like this in particularly is very brushed aside. It's not much talked about. Um, but yeah, it's really bad, and I could get into like the whole statistics and everything like another time for
Mm-hmm.
sure.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess the next thing I would want to talk about is difference between punishment in Black versus non-Black students. And I've been looking at a lot of statistics recently, and from what I can tell, a Black student is more likely to be punished severely compared to a white student who would do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to read something really quickly, if possible.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so Black students represent 19% of students with disabilities, or ridiculous 36% of those with disabilities are restrained in school, actually,
Mm-hmm.
compared to their white counterparts. And when Black students and white students commit similar infractions, Black students are suspended and expelled 3 times more than white students, which is very alarming.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like this is because Black children tend to be adultified. We tend to be aged more, which makes us seem less innocent.
So, since we're comparing a bit, since you've gone to international schools and American schools, do you think that there's a difference between the kind of experiences with racism and overall just um, patterns that you see in international schools versus American schools?
Yes. So I definitely want to say, keep in mind that U.S. Public schools, they're definitely less diverse compared to international schools. Um, and even international schools, I'm used to like, even if it's very diverse, I'm used to being like one of like only a few Black students. Um, but for U.S. schools, I feel like the racism is much more, I guess, hidden.
Mm-hmm.
It's hidden, yeah, blatant at the same time. Because, for example, like a student or teacher could say, like, can make a racial offensive comment to your face, and like they could get away with it. But also systematically, like I was talking about in the previous question. But compared to international schools, I don't see it much, I have to say.
Mm-hmm.
And it's definitely there, I feel like, but like because like kids from international schools are used to being around all types of different people, I feel like it's not much there.
Yeah. And from what I've seen, at least, is that international schools actively try to, like, there's much more punishment for discrimination, and they actively try to be more inclusive, even if it doesn't always work. Like, there is effort, I think, in international schools, so there's that. Yeah.
Yeah, adding on to that, yeah, I definitely agree. Like international schools, they definitely try to promote like a sense of acceptance and like diversity among the student body,
Mm-hmm.
compared to American schools where it's like it's performative diversity, where it's
Yeah.
like like those memes about like college students taking pictures with like all types of like different people just for the sake of saying, oh, we're diverse. Yeah, it's much more performative in U.S. schools.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And in American schools, how would you describe the diversity overall in the student body and the staff, and also why, could you explain a bit about why you think that diversity is important in making students of all backgrounds feel welcome?
Yeah, for sure. I feel like in U.S. schools, like the diversity is very much. I don't know. I want to say that it's non-existent, like within like clubs and like when you see like the leaders of clubs or like football teams, like other sports
Mm-hmm.
teams, like it was like the captains or like, you know, I want to say that it's pretty much not diverse. Like from
Mm-hmm.
my experience, like it's usually like one race versus another race is like they're like pitted against each other, and like yeah. So I want to bring up an example from my old school. Like I was saying, it was predominantly Southeast Asian, and like about the same amount of Caucasian kids, and then like the rest were like Hispanic, Asian, and Black. And I feel like the main groups they were constantly like degrading each other, and this created a sense of like trying to like make the other one feel like you don't belong.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the diversity was very much like it was very like yeah non-existent. I
Mm-hmm.
guess you could say. Yeah.
So what you're saying is that even when there was diversity, a lot of the time, like the individual groups would be separated and wouldn't. It was yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
and this caused cliques. And yeah, as you know, cliques are very like they're very segregated.
mm-hmm.
I must say, like there were different groups of like it was like oh the Indian kids hang out there, like you don't hang out with them, or like the white kids hang out here, and then the black kids hang out here, and like it was very yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Very,
And so, why would you say that diversity is so important in schools?
I guess you could say that like it's most important because like it introduces you to people of like all different backgrounds and like even if you don't personally find an interest in that person, it like teaches you how to respect everyone and show the same like decency to people like inherent to all, you know. It's about basic respect. Like you don't have to agree with that person, you don't have to follow their lifestyle or whatever. It's about respect. You
Mm-hmm.
can respect the fact that they have the right to do whatever they want in their lives and you don't control it. And yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that it's so important in being able to like widen your perspective and see things from different perspectives, and yeah. Um, and going off of that with diversity, do you think that in a lot of the schools you've gone to, because in a lot of international schools, they often try to portray themselves as very diverse and inclusive, and a lot of the time it is true. But do you think that in a lot of the schools you've gone to, not just international, there's a difference between how schools portray themselves and the reality of diversity?
Yes. So okay, the current school I'm going to, they like always like state how diverse they're and like it's true. Like from my experience, they are very diverse and like people are very accepting. But from the international schools I've gone to before, they try to like state it as well. And I feel like it compares to US schools in the fact that it's pretty much not and it's very performative. Like I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to bring the past school we both went to.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was very much not diverse. And I remember like I was pretty much one of two black kids
Mm-hmm.
I remember. And I remember my first introduction and meeting orientation with the school, Miss Mercer. Do you remember her?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, I remember her talking about how I'd fit right in, and like all the kids were so accepting, and like I feel like that's definitely something that I had to learn later on the line. That's like it's really not all it seems to be, and obviously
Mm-hmm.
it's because like from the teacher's perspective, they're going to try to like gas it up, and at the same time, obviously they have never seen or experienced what the actual students are going to experience because it's
Mm-hmm.
not their point of view. Um, but personally, from like what I've seen, it's definitely not diverse, but they had to sell it that way, and that's very damaging because like they don't offer support for like students who do feel like marginalized.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, so yeah, I think that um it's true that teachers don't always see what happens within the students, and even when something does happen, it always is seen different by the teachers, Yeah. Yeah. So what kind of things do you see that international schools do well that American schools don't in terms of promoting diversity?
From what I can see from this school, they are actively trying to be a part of the solution.
Mm-hmm.
That's something I see a lot of American schools are not doing. Like my school, like um, we tend to we have this one club called Amnesty, which
Yeah.
is a mock Amnesty International, where we talk about all types of issues affecting everyone in the world, including race issues, police brutality, things like that. So like they like allow the students to feel comfortable talking about things that people don't want to talk about that makes you uncomfortable, you know? And like when the school opens up and it starts to allow conversations like that, it makes people feel more comfortable. Like we're able to express how we feel. We're able to like share our opinions on like things that are actively affecting us, you
Mm-hmm.
know, because we are the next generation, right?
Yeah.
So it's time to start having these conversations that are very well overdue. And like from American schools, I feel like yeah, they have Black Caucus or the Black Student Union, but that's not enough
Mm-hmm.
because I don't only want schools to recognize um, African Americans or Black students, also other marginalized groups and oppressed groups, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like here we have groups for all sorts of people, which is very like it like sets the atmosphere of like a very inclusive school,
Yeah.
like and because we're able to like interact with all types of different people and like we're able to like gain understanding and learn more opinion and like on a especially on a subject that like is like actively like oppressing like our peers, you know, we're able to like gain insight on that and learn how we're contributing to the problem, what we
Mm-hmm.
can do to help. I think it's really important. Compared to American schools, I feel like they definitely don't do that. That's something that's like a step that needs to be taken because you know branding yourself as a diverse school by just having a Black student union or acknowledging Black History Month or learning about Dr. Martin Luther King. That's not enough. It's much
Mm-hmm.
deeper than that. You
Yeah.
know, like you have to like be out there and understand. Because if you're only promoting like the surface, like you're treading lightly, to be frank. Like you're not actively getting to the root of the problem because it's much deeper than just like forming clubs or you know like doing activities that celebrate diversity. You
Mm-hmm.
know, so
Yeah, definitely. And so, just to finish off, I don't know if this kind of blends in with the last question, but what kind of things in both American and international schools do you think that teachers can do to support anti racist material and lift up oppressed voices?
okay, so I guess the first thing I would say is this is very like a lot of people are talking about it, and I guess it would be don't ignore race and the role that a whitewashed version of history plays
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like it's only recent that everyone's been discovering that even pictures from the civil rights movement have been faded to black and
Yeah.
white because apparently schools want you to think that it was such a long time ago and
Mm-hmm.
that racism and segregation and all of that is like in the past. But no,
Mm-hmm.
it's still in the present, but it just presents itself in different ways. And I also want to add to that, like, for example, I want to bring up To Kill a Mockingbird,
Mm-hmm.
widely renowned in US schools as like a piece of like indisposable literature that like paints um black perspective in like that time era. And I want to add that the book was in fact written by a non-black person,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I feel like a lot of schools rely on that, particularly for like promoting like anti-racist or non-racist material, which is do this, you should introduce people to race. And by that, I mean like books written by people who have experienced these things, not just like a dense version.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, and it's been a really great experience talking to you. And well, thank you so much for sharing everything that you shared.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me.